think it's interesting that they have changed it so that you can put your phone up right now, and they've made like the longer screen. Sorry, try not to get distracted. So I haven't put a video up for the last, I think, 2 days, or maybe it's just been 1 day. People were not charmed by the idea of meat rabbits in the attic. I don't know why. Between the mess and the air quality and the noise. So I made that one private just because the reason I made it private was because when you have that many thumbs down in a very short period of time, you know that it's going to be one that really doesn't benefit anybody. Definitely doesn't benefit me because it creates some hate in my direction. So I made that one private. That's what I always do. If people don't like it, I've got so many videos over the years that I've taken down that probably were pretty harmless, but I really didn't like them. Okay, so good morning, Ashy. I am out taking a walk. We have bikes now, and so it's a lot easier to come out and get some better sunshine, some better air. But the bunnies themselves are working out really well. The girls, they are up in the attic where they have really good air. Hey Nancy, they're up in the attic where they have really good air, and I don't vacuum up there. We sweep up there, so there's less noise, less to cause them worry. There's still no smell up there because there's really good airflow, and we're changing their bedding every day. Hey Maniac Grammy, how are you? So the rabbits are actually working out really well for the girls as pets, which I assumed that they would. It is a very pretty area. This is Riverside, and the Riverside bike belt jogging route, and it's 50 miles total. I've taken the 15, I hope I'm not covering the microphone. I've taken the 15-mile route myself, and it's absolutely beautiful. Good morning, Smallwood. Good morning, Eva. I've done the small loop myself, but it's a very, very extensive bike path that just goes forever, and it's wonderful. I'll try to not let the breeze make it so you can't hear me. So the bunnies are doing really well as pets. They're little lion head bunnies, and I just went and spent a ton of money getting the girls new homeschool books. Whenever the girls get to a level where they're asking me a ton of questions, and it's not necessarily that I don't have the answers, but I don't feel like I have answers that the girls understand because they keep asking me the questions. Like I didn't go in depth enough, or whatever it may be. That's when I go back to my trusty Amazon. And this time I was able to find comic books that were science comic books. They're from my absolute favorite comic book publishers. They're always really high quality, educational, and not smutty. And so I do that about every 6 months when I have a hard time finding at the library things I think are super high quality, and so that's what I do. I go and I buy the books, and I treat them as a curriculum. If the girls can read them and it doesn't go in one eye and out the other, however you'd say that, if it's something the girls can really engage with and they're learning from it, then I treat it as curriculum, even though they're, to all intents and purposes, comic books. Let's see what everybody is saying. Smallwood said it's 29 degrees here in southern Illinois, but it's a lovely sunny day. Yeah, I don't know what the temps are this morning. It's probably high 30s, low 40s. It's supposed to snow tomorrow. Hey Danny, how are you? Hey Bobby! Happy birthday yesterday. I don't know if you got the Facebook message. Little Farm Big Dreams. There is Elizabeth. Make sure to go check her out. Her channel is doing really well. She's got some fun videos on there right now. Yeah, no smutty comics. Sunny but freezing there. Punky, you were saying, hey Punky, how are you? I'm going to try and do a spotlight on Punky probably next week. I did not get to editing this week. We had a super busy Saturday. The other thing is Catherine over at Little Bits of Heaven Homestead. She's been doing a lot of live streams lately about meat rabbits, and what's the other one that she did recently that was super good? She's been doing a lot of keto stuff. So 32 degrees there. Yeah, it's supposed to be super cold here tomorrow, but it's actually really pleasant today. I am mourning the fact that my spinning wheel is not here yet because Kaya wore, let's see if I can find it. Kaya has been wearing my scarf. I made this scarf back, oh my gosh, how many years ago? Almost 20 years ago. And Kaya used it because it's been cold here. And she found this little piece of yarn and decided that she wanted to pull on it. So I put it on this morning, kind of just trying not to be frustrated, and I need to fix it later, but I'm too vain to put a stocking cap on right now. I don't want to smash my hair. So when my spinning wheel gets here, the first order of business is to spin some yarn and make myself a hood that will go on and not smush my hair, because I like to be warm, but I also like my vanity. Let's see. 50 degrees in southern Louisiana. And then Tina said, good morning, all. 27 in Ohio. Yeah, so fall is here, folks. I have to admit that this year I'm so into Christmas stuff, it's nauseating. I'm never into Christmas stuff, and I'm never into it early. But before Halloween, I was playing Christmas music. I just really feel it this year for whatever reason. I'm just bring on the Christmas. Kai wanted to go Christmas shopping yesterday, she wanted to go get a tree. And we told her we don't have her to store it. We have to wait at least until after Thanksgiving. Eva said 23 in central Indiana. I'm feeling pretty toasty right now. I think it's because the sun just came out, as you can see. Smallwood said, I've been crocheting Christmas gifts like a mad woman. Yeah, you are behind the clock if that's what you're doing. I haven't even started. I find that I revolt against purchasing yarn because I can make my own and I can make it exactly how I want it. I haven't even thought once about going and purchasing yarn, and so I have nothing finished. Usually I make little teeny tiny doll clothes for my mom's favorite dolls for Christmas for her, but I didn't bring any of that yarn. It's a teensy tiny yarn, and it's like thread weight yarn. And the crochet, or not the crochet, the knitting needles are that long. They're that long. You have 4 little teeny tiny knitting needles that you're trying to use to crochet this little doll's dress. Let's see. Ashley says, I love Christmas. I usually tolerate Christmas, and usually I hate my birthdays, but I have to say this year it really teared me up. John saw how much I was struggling at trying to find a way to get enough fresh air, and my bike had been stolen, and so he insisted, and we went out, and it was after my birthday, but he went and he bought me a bike, and it was a really nice bike. And it really touched my heart, and all of a sudden, even though it was 2 days after my birthday, I felt like I'd had the best birthday ever. So sometimes I think it does have a little bit to do with the gifts and feeling like you have something to look forward to, not just the party, but to, like, actual physical goods that like were meaningful. Not just physical goods, but something you actually wanted, that people had listened and they saw your need and they provided. I mean, it touched my heart. You know, his first gift to me was a cordless drill. And I was so excited to get it. It was my first cordless drill I'd ever had, and I'd wanted one. And it was back when they were kind of new. They were a new thing. And that was his first gift to me before we got married for my birthday. And since then, he's bought me like Leatherman, like the pocket knife things, tools, and stuff like that. He's pretty good with gifts. But I think I'm pretty easy to buy for, because if it's a tool or something like that, I'm pretty into it. All right, James Hutchings said, good morning. I was wondering what you did for insulation on your prefab small barn cabin there in Southeast Idaho, and what size is it? Ours is 12 by 24. Last year it was raining inside from condensation. So we left, you know how in the top of those sheds they have the little screening that is open? Like it's a screening just to keep bugs out and to allow ventilation. We left those open. We did not close them off. So we had, and we had the wood burning stove, and we had other ventilation. Our first winter there, I'm trying to think, we had, we just used the fluffy rolls of fiberglass as our insulation. And then on the walls on the sides, up in the attic, I used rigid board. But I have 2 vents in the tops of my cabin that are open. There's no door to them. They're just screened. I have a piece of fabric over it, just so you can't see it, but it breathes really, really well. And if you're in but we're in Southeast Idaho, we are desert. And so I didn't have to worry about a lot of moisture, even though, well, I guess I should take that back. We rained through until almost July last year when we were there in the early spring. We were still using our wood burning stove almost until July. So we just used pink insulation, but we kept those vents in the top open. And I know that Doug and Stacy did the same thing, but their vents went into the actual airspace that where you put the insulation. And so venting, we didn't have any problem with humidity. We actually took down the tin that originally I had used tin as the inside finishing of the tiny cabin. Old tin that I had harvested from a calf shed, my father-in-law's calf shed. So I had tin, ridged tin, that I used as the inside treatment. And halfway through the summer, I went and got plywood and took several pieces of that tin down. And I put plywood up instead. And when we pulled the tin down and looked at the insulation and looked at the walls, there was absolutely no mold, there was no condensation, there were no bugs. Everything was just fine. It's getting cold and I should do my coat. And so I have taken that cabin apart and put it back together 3 times now, because I started out with free materials on the inside and I bartered a lot, and then as I had the energy and the materials, I made it better. So I took the tin down in places I didn't like it, and I put plywood up, and then I plastered and painted that. And then I had another spot where I actually wanted the whole wall to be a cushion so that people could use it as a back for above the rocket mass heater bench. So then I put foam along the wall, and then I stapled fabric over the top to the 2x4s. And so it's a pretty wall that's really just a cushion. I think that's the best thing about tiny houses, is they're so inexpensive and it takes so little material to make it better that you really can play with it, and it cost us nothing. I think the most expensive thing that I did was the plaster, and I think it did cost me probably $150 in plaster just for the one. Well, I guess I did it there at the entry too. So I did the entry wall there as you come in the front door, and then I did the wall that is on the north side, and I did the ceiling between the joists that were supporting the attic. I did those with plaster, and I think it made a big difference in just the Instagram quality of the house. It just made it look more homey. Let's see. Smallwood said, is it like fingerling yarn? That's tiny stuff. It's even smaller than fingerling. It is, it's the yarn you use to turn heels on socks. You know how they have that yarn that's just super, super, super tiny? It's literally thread weight yarn. So it's still made out of wool and it's still springy, but it's much smaller than fingerling. It is the gauge of thread, but it's made out of wool. And yeah, it's super tiny. How is your rocket mass heater 2.0 keep temperature wise? Well, we got back in beginning of April last year. Let's see, we left and we were in Tulsa by Thanksgiving. So last year we were there until the end of November. And we had temperatures down in the, well, it was always freezing. And that was 1.0. And it kept us warm, but what happened was we were having a lot of condensation, so we didn't get to test it out in those temperatures. But when we got back in March and the beginning of April, that is when that's when 2.0 went in. And with 2.0, what happened was I could have the last embers just dying at about 10 o'clock at night, and we'd get up in the morning, and I wouldn't need to light a fire for 2 hours, if that makes sense. I generally would light it just because it's a habit that when you get up in the morning and you're off grid, you light the fire, because for one thing, I can cook because I have that oven that goes over the top of the rocket mass heater. I had that little oven, and so if I started the fire, I could cook. But the best part was, well, the best part is the mass, because it doesn't superheat things. I liked it better without as many pebbles around the actual heat shroud, the actual place where the smoke goes and then loops down. I liked it better without a ton of pebbles in there because it heated the room up a little bit faster. When you have the whole heat shroud full of pebbles, I'm not talking about the bench, I'm talking about right around where the fire smoke initially goes up and then goes down. Initially that was completely full of pebbles. And it took a long time for the room to heat up because all the heat was getting sucked into the pebbles. Once you had the fire going, sorry, I keep covering up my microphone. Once you have the fire going, it will, or no, what am I saying? Once the heat is in the pebbles, it stays hot a really long time. But when you first start the fire, if the whole thing is surrounded by pebbles, there isn't any, is it radiant heat that goes out into the air, not into the anyway. There wasn't enough surface unexposed to those pebbles to allow heat into the room. It was all going into the pebbles, so we would be cold for a long time if it had been too long since I had started the fire. I should stop right there because it's not too bad. Why is the light so weird out here? Off-grid lifestyle. Hello, hello. Hi, Celie. I tried to flip the phone when we first started and it didn't work. Good morning, RV Radio. Good. Let's see. Yeah, flipping the phone won't work. And they have changed it so that it'll do up and down. You just have to pull the screen down a little bit. Just poke just under the face and pull the screen down and it should work. It's a new thing they're doing. I should go sit in a swing because my arms are gonna fall off. Let's see. So that is how the stove worked. And when we left, it was, we'd had to light it a couple times when we left because we left in September. And so that's how the rocket mass heater worked. And honestly, I think the nice thing about having a wood stove is that your air quality in your house is better in the winter. You have the door opening and shutting a lot because you're going out to get wood. And you have to, even if you're not storing the wood in your house and you're storing it outside your front door, every couple hours you go out and you grab a piece of wood, you put the piece of wood in, opens the door, gives you a little more ventilation, it dries the air out. And if you have like a tea kettle or something that you have going, it can bring the moisture back in. But we use it a lot for things like drying laundry or drying food. We would put up our open air food dehydrator next to it. And we had one of those little fans that runs off the heat of the stove itself. I definitely prefer the rocket mass heater. The reason is we had zero creosote. We had zero creosote, which amazed us. We thought we would have a creosote problem. I never had to get up and clean the chimney. We did a trial run cleaning the chimney when we left last November, and there was a little bit of creosote in it. And this year, what we did is, trying to remember why we did it. I think we did it just to see. So when I went to leave this summer, after we had been burning it all spring and half of the summer, we took it apart. And I think we were adding, I'm trying to think what we were adding. We were adding something, was it the chimney? Something we were doing. Anyway, we took the whole thing apart and checked to see what the creosote level was, and there was zero creosote. There wasn't even creosote in the bench. And we had been running it day and night for months. Zero creosote. So I didn't have to clean it. It was super efficient. It didn't go through a lot of wood. And with the Aircrete oven on it, I could bake bread in the house. And the way that it worked was such that even though I was baking bread in the house with the wood stove, it didn't overheat the house because the heat went into the Aircrete and warmed the Aircrete up first before it went out into the room. So it actually kept the house a little bit cooler when I was baking bread than it did when I was just burning it as a stove to keep us warm. All right, so Any other questions? Let's see, what other things do we have? Keto is working. John went off keto for a bit and gained weight very quickly, but a lot of what he was eating was processed food. He didn't go from keto to paleo, he went from keto to standard American diet. So he gained 10 pounds back very quickly. I'm on keto, but I have added some carbs back in. Let's see, Ashley said more horse videos, please. I'm working on that. I like to make the horse videos, but I try really hard not to repeat myself. I don't want you guys to feel like what I'm putting out there isn't worth watching or that it's on repeat. I want to feel like I'm showing you something new every time. So once we progress from where we are now, which is that Paige is doing the riding on Gunner, Kai is riding Dragonfly, we're working on groundwork a lot. What I'd like to do is set up some archery courses with like Nerf guns to let the girls have some adventuring and add some more skills, and have the horses be even calmer than they already are. Mike said, I like the mass heater. I like the mass heater too. I think it's phenomenal. So if you guys don't know about the Rocket Mass heater, we have old videos of it. I've been putting the links to some of my favorite videos up on Facebook, so if you want to follow me on Facebook, I try to put a couple links up to old videos that I think are really good a couple times a week. Off-Grid Lifestyle said, did you manage to find a place to garden? I haven't yet. I think that they would let me if I asked them at the boarding place. I did ask the landlord here if it was okay for me to keep the rabbits and some birds, and they said it was fine. So I do have permission to do the animals, but if I'm going to do the animals, I feel a strong need for a compost pile because I don't like to waste all the manure and I don't like to waste the carbon that I'm using as bedding. Hey Maximiliano. Hello, hello. Mr. Chris said, I heard Rocket Mass stove burns wood to a point you have to constantly feeding it. This came from Oppenheimer Ranch Project. Can you clear this up, please? So, I don't feed it at night. I don't get up in the middle of the night and put wood in my stove. I don't need to. The mass is still warm in the morning. 8 hours later, it's still warm. Do I have to feed it during the day? I feed it during the day because if you let your bench get cold, then you have to heat your mass back up. So I would feed it similar as far as frequency to a regular wood burning stove, but the pieces that I put in are only this big. They're like 2 by 2. The burn chamber on a not every Rocket Mass heater, but on my Rocket Mass heater, the burn chamber is small enough that I can't put in more than a 2 by 2 piece of wood. And so I put another piece of wood in as frequently as I would into a big stove, but my burn chamber is smaller. Whereas with the big stove, you'd be putting in big pieces of wood. I'm putting in tiny pieces of wood with the same frequency. And then when I'm ready for bed at night, I stop putting wood in and I close everything down. And the nice thing is it doesn't smolder. It's not a smoldering stove. You can't, I mean, you could smolder it because you can turn down the air, but Rocket Mass heaters run best at super hot. My stove heat, let's see, I need a tissue, sorry, my nose is running in the cold. My stove is different. My stove does have a damper. You can damper it. You can damp it down, but it does not run efficiently. What you want to do instead is keep it super, super hot and only put in wood as you need it, and then let it die down at night. And so it's very, very different from a conventional stove because you don't have the raging heat. My stove has those pebbles around the shroud that goes around it. It has the heat riser, and then it has a secondary wall that has pea gravel in it. And so it does not get to a blinding sweat producing heat in my cabin ever. Instead, when there's heat, it goes into the pea gravel, and then I let the stove die, and then the pea gravel lets the heat out, and it keeps the heat mass warm long enough that if I decide I want to start another fire, everything is warm. My chimney is aircrete, so even my chimney is super, super insulated. So when I start a fire, it sucks the smoke up. The smoke doesn't just lazily go up the chimney, it sucks the smoke up my chimney after an 18-inch drop and then going through the 8-foot bench. So that's the difference. That's why my stove is different from all the other rocket mass heaters out there, is because my chimney is insulated with aircrete. It is a smoke vacuum. It is not a chimney, it's a smoke vacuum. And so when the heat comes out of my rocket mass heater, it drops 18 inches, goes through the bench, and then it goes out the chimney. And that's why it's amazing, is because it doesn't matter how cold it gets outside. It's not a double wall chimney in the regular sense of the word, which is just insulated with air. It's just two chimneys, one bigger than the other, that has air in the space. Mine has aircrete in that space, and because it's aircrete, it's super light. Each one of those three foot sections weighs maybe 3 pounds, because aircrete is super, super light. So if you guys are interested in that kind of thing, go over and see the Honeydew Carpenter, because he's the one that built it all. He designed it all, he built it all. He's actually building my parents a stove for their basement that will look more trendy, more elegant. And so that's what he's working on right now, is that. But everything that I have was built by the Honeydew Carpenter. What type of wood? My wood is soft. I have soft wood. I generally burn pine. And so if there was ever anything that was going to cause a creosote problem, it's pine. And I have no creosote problem. Hey, Hideaway. I like the name of your channel, Hideaway Homestead. We need a rocket mass heater, dryer, or dry clothing in winter. I don't know why you couldn't do that. We used ours for drying clothes. We would just put it there close to the stove, and then we would turn our little fan towards whatever we wanted to dry. That's what we did when we were drying food. In our little open air dehydrator next to the stove, is we would just turn the fan in that direction, and it would blow the warm air onto it. Let's see. Ashley said rocket mass heater for pizza. Yes, and we have a oven that fits on the top of our rocket stove, and it is filled with aircrete. And the reason it works, it wouldn't work if it wasn't filled with aircrete, because it wouldn't retain the heat well enough. It wouldn't be insulated enough. And when we turned the stove up to create a greater heat for the cooking, it would just bake us out of our house. But because my oven that fits on top of my rocket stove is filled with aircrete, it actually brings the temperature of the room down a few degrees, because as the stove heats up, it's absorbing that heat instead of letting it out into the room. And it's brilliant, amazing. We made biscuits and baked potatoes, and what else did we make in there? Brownies, roast chicken. What else did we make in there? I also did yogurt in it, but the yogurt was a little bit trickier. I had to do it outside where I could turn the heat off because it got too hot in the oven for yogurt. You should make one. Ashley said she should make one. I would highly recommend getting the plans from Honeydew Carpenter. I don't know if he has the plans up for the stove yet. And I know he's working on the plans for the stove and the oven. Anyway, they're all good projects. My fingers are freezing. Okay, anybody want to talk about anything else? The keto has been working. I brought more carbs in. I find that I don't have enough energy without more carbs than the 20 grams that they allow when you're on legitimate keto. So I have definitely upped my carbs. And I have the kids on kind of a quasi keto. I've upped their fat intake, but and decreased their sweet carbs and their bready carbs. And they're doing really well on that. And other than that, hey, Offgrid, thank you. You are welcome. Oh, Booty Hunter said, do you use dry wood? I use very, very dry wood. The wood that I have been using is 3 years old. We had stacked and filled the woodshed before we left on our trip, and that's been almost 3 years ago. And so I go out and I chop new wood every day, restack it in the woodshed, and then bring some to the house. One of the big tricks of what we've done is that we encased our porch in plastic, and that way I can store a day's worth of wood there if people got sick, if we had a blizzard, if it wasn't safe to go outside because the temperatures were too extreme. I can store my wood in my enclosed porch, and we shower in the enclosed porch because all we have to do is open the front door, let the heat out into the enclosed porch. It heats it up because it's encased in plastic. We shower there. We have curtains that pull across the front. And I really value, I wouldn't value a bigger house. I value it as it is because it is a porch. It contains mess. It gives me somewhere warm to work, to do my woodworking, or to shower kids, or to store wood. But it keeps all that dirty stuff out of the house. So instead of needing a bigger house, I just need an enclosed porch in the winter. Let's see. I'm growing a liking of your knitting videos. Can you make another one, please? I will as soon as I have my spinning wheel. I do not have my spinning wheel yet. I needed, the one that I still had is not one that travels. I couldn't get it on a plane, so I had to leave it in the little cabin. So I had to order myself a new spinning wheel. It's been 2 or 3, how many weeks has it been? I think it's been almost a month since I ordered it and it's still not here. So I have been doing spinning with my drop spindle, but not as much as I would if I was using my spinning wheel, and so I haven't done any projects in a while. How do you heat your water? So we have wood stove for heat and baking, and then we use propane on our Elmira cook stove. It has a propane attachment and it's beautiful. So we store our pots and pans and our dry goods in and on our Elmira wood stove, and then it has the propane attachment on the side that we cook with for things like boiling water. We just use a big pot and we boil the water, and I can usually just use like a tea kettle to boil, and then you add that to cold water. You don't heat all of your water. What you do is you have cold water that you add boiling water to, and then it gives you the right temperature without wasting a lot of fuel, bringing all that huge amount of water up to speed, up to heat. Instead, you want to boil a small amount and add it to cold. Let's see. Yeah, that's how we do it for a shower. We heat up the water in a really big pot on the propane stove. And it used to be we'd heat it up on the wood burning stove if we had power out and we were in the big house. We would heat it up on the propane, and then you have your cold water for your shower, and you add your boiling water to that, and it brings it up to the right temperature. Hey James. So, okay. My fingers are freezing, and I would bet that my family is awake now. So if you guys have any more questions, I am going to be trying to do more videos. I have microgreens I still need to show you. I can show you guys the rabbits and how they're doing. But I'm trying to think what else there is. Right now, it's all just kind of, when John's home, I pretty much drop everything. And if I haven't filmed something that I think would actually be of use to you, then I don't put it up. So if I feel like it's redundant, I don't do it. So make sure to go check out our Instagram account. Let's see, Facebook, everything like that. And if you need Christmas stuff and you want to check out our Etsy store, it's Dirt Patch Heaven on Etsy. Oh, James, I probably shouldn't. Hey, James. I've seen some of your comments on Honeydew Carpenter, and I am not impressed. Honeydew Carpenter, I think it takes a certain kind of brilliant mind to make some of the things that Darwin has made for me and my family. And I love them to pieces. And he did amazing things for me and my family. And hopefully we helped them as much by helping them grow their channel. So I absolutely love Darwin and Melanie over at the Honeydew Carpenter, and it takes time to build something the right way, and he takes the time to build it the right way, and I absolutely love them. So